All right, let's get this thing started. We are live. Black Belt Zen. I'm David coming at you. Wednesday, June the 6th, 2021. Well, you might have heard this news came out the other day. Jake Paul is going to fight Tyron Woodly. That's all I got to say about that. Okay, move on. All right, so in the last week's video, we do live videos every week. In last week's video, I talked a little bit about checking the bank account and how some people I know check their bank online every day, and other people check it like maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and some people go months without checking their account. Well, as things would work out, just this morning I was on the phone with the bank about some charges that didn't make sense that I had to get cleared up. Turned out it was fine. Nobody compromised my account or anything like that, though I have had that happen a couple of times. But not this time and not in many, many years. But that's why you check your account all the time, just in case charges don't make sense or somebody accidentally double charges you, especially if you bring your car in and then shows up on your account. Oh, they charged me twice. And then you call them and say, "Hey, what's going on here?" And they say, "Hey, we can't charge you twice." Well, you did. So what's that? Which happened to me about 4 or 5 years ago, which I ended up getting straightened out eventually. But that's car places have the reputation they have, and that's probably well deserved for the most part. Though there are some people in there who aren't that way, but a lot of them are. So that's a video for another day, probably if you're looking to buy a car. But from what I hear, used cars now are going way up in price as well, and cars are expensive. Housing is out of control with expenses right now. We've gotten to the end of COVID here, pretty much, at least in the United States, and a lot of things are happening. I think we're going to be in for a very busy second half of the year. At least if you're in the US. If you're in Canada or Europe or Asia, some of these other places you're still having issues. But in America, we're pretty much over it. So going back to the thing with the bank is this is kind of an old school way of thinking because most people don't really carry that much cash anymore. If someone were to look in your wallet right now, how much cash would they see in there? I frequently have maybe just a few dollars or sometimes no cash whatsoever. But I do try to carry a little bit just in case the card doesn't work or something like that. But here's another thing to keep in mind is I do keep cash in the house. I never did until last year when I thought I lost my wallet and all my cards were in there. I thought, oh, well, what am I going to do now if I won't have any access to any money for 10 days or something if I can't find my wallet and have to cancel my card or both my cards and wait for that whole process to go through. It takes about a week and a half. So I started keeping some cash in the house just in case my wallet gets lost or stolen or something, or the information gets compromised in some way. So you have access to cash just in case you need it. Because if you've ever lost your wallet or thought it was stolen or had credit cards not work or debit cards not work, that can be a big hassle. So that's why you keep extra cash either in your wallet, which some people do, maybe $50 or $100 in their wallet that they don't touch unless there's an emergency and they need cash for it, or they keep some of that money in the house. Again, kind of an old school way of thinking, but not a bad idea because we're going to have cash for a while. A lot of talk about cashless society, maybe. And I don't know. I don't understand that stuff well enough to comment on it. But I know it's not here yet. So I think it's a good idea to at least consider keeping some cash in a safe or a drawer or something like that where you have easy access to it if you need it in a situation where you can't access your card. I'm going to talk a little bit today about the Stanley Cup playoffs. If you follow me on Twitter at Black Belt Zen, I obviously do a lot of martial arts stuff and different types of things. In other videos, we've talked about that. But I also am a big fan of the Vegas Golden Knights hockey team. And they're in the playoffs right now. I was fortunate enough to go to Game 7 of the opening round against Minnesota on Friday night, a game Vegas won 6-2. Really fun game. Zach Parise of the Wild in the first period had one of the craziest goals I've ever seen. His back is to the net. He's kind of right in front of Marc-Andre Fleury, the Knights goalie, and he puts the puck between his legs and between Fleury's legs, and it goes into the back of the net. First goal of the game for Minnesota, and what probably will be Zach Parise's final goal as a member of the Wild. The veteran appears to be on the outs with management. He may retire, but I don't think so. But maybe. But he'll almost certainly not be in Minnesota next year. And he's from Minneapolis and played at the University of North Dakota, which is actually the rival of the University of Minnesota. But he's from Minneapolis and he's been playing for the Wild for a long time. And if that's his final goal as a member of the Minnesota Wild, that's pretty cool. So that was a lot of fun to be at the game on Friday night. Sunday, the Knights got absolutely demolished in Colorado, a 7-1 loss. In the third period of the game, Colorado had a 9-minute power play because Ryan Reeves, the goon, he's a true goon, the enforcer for the Golden Knights, retaliated against Ryan Graves, a member of the Colorado Avalanche. So Graves is a tall guy. I think he's about 6'5". And Reeves is a big guy too. He's kind of more bigger though than he's only about 6'1" or 6'2", but he doesn't have quite the height of some of the other guys. But he's considered probably the toughest player in the league. Ryan Reeves is certainly one of them. And it was a retaliation to an interference penalty by Graves earlier in the game where one of the Golden Knights players was injured up against the boards, just hit his head against the board after being hit a little bit late and had to leave the game. And Graves got a 2-minute penalty and was seen kind of laughing about it later on. And I think Ryan Reeves, the Knights certainly didn't appreciate that. That's why you have a guy like Reeves or Tom Wilson or Evander Kane, someone like that on your roster, so that if a guy breaks the rules and injures one of your players, you say to them, okay, if you're going to do that to one of our guys, then one of our guys is going to do that to you. And that's pretty much why Ryan Reeves is on the team. He's not a goal scorer the way, Tom Wilson or Evander Kane are. He's really there to intimidate. And he does a good job of that. And he gets into a lot of fights, and the audience gets fired up about that, and players oftentimes get fired up about that stuff. And a lot of times in hockey, the fights will actually stop the dirty hits and the pushing and shoving and things like that. These guys will drop the gloves, they'll have a fight, and then it's kind of over. So you don't see a lot of fights in the playoffs because nobody wants that 5-minute penalty, and especially in a close game. You're not going to see much fight in the playoffs, no matter what the score is. But especially in close games, because you don't want to do that to your team. But it does happen. There was a big fight a couple years ago between Ryan Reeves and Evander Kane of the San Jose Sharks. Happened in Game 3. Late in the game, Vegas was way ahead, and Reeves and Kane had been rivals for a long time, and they ended up dropping the gloves and going at it. And Alex Ovechkin got into a fight with a young guy, like a 19-year-old, a couple years ago in a playoff game. I think the kid ended up having to leave on a stretcher or something. It's pretty ugly. So you do see it, but it's not the norm. But Reeves comes up to Graves late in the game. Vegas is so far behind they can't win. Somewhere about maybe 12 minutes left in the game or so, something like that. And Reeves cross-checks the goalie for the Avalanche and then turns around, grabs Graves, throws him to the ground, puts his knee on, I think it was Graves' face. And it was reported later that he had pulled hair out of Graves' head. And so he was ejected from the game for intent to injure. And the next day ended up getting suspended by the league for 2 games. So he's not going to play tonight, and he's not going to play Friday night. Next eligible game for Reeves will be Sunday in Vegas. That'll be game 4 of the series. And depending on what happens the next 2 nights, that could be significant because if Vegas is down 3-0, then they're going to be, they're going to be in trouble. But if it's 2-1 either way, that's that's going to be a huge game, and we're all excited about that here in Vegas. I think getting ready for tonight's game and hopefully a much better performance by the Golden Knights. Now Reeves has a history of these types of plays, but so does Tom Wilson of the what am I thinking about here? Washington Capitals. This is why people don't do live feeds, right? They go blank for a second. They don't want to look stupid. I am willing to look stupid for all of you. Okay. So about a month ago or so, Tom Wilson had what I thought was a similar play to what Ryan Reeves did. Maybe it wasn't quite as bad, but it was an intent to injure against a New York Rangers player, and Wilson was not suspended. Not suspended, given a measly $5,000 fine. And then the next game between the Avalanche or not the Avalanche, jeez, between the Capitals and the Rangers, as soon as the puck drops, you've got 3 fights going on. All of this because of what happened the night before with Tom Wilson and him not getting suspended really upset a lot of hockey fans. It definitely upset the New York Rangers, who made a public statement saying they're unhappy with this. Well, they said a little more than that. And they ended up getting fined $250,000 for speaking out against the league, where Tom Wilson intention to injure $5,000, and Wilson has a long history of this kind of dirty play. He's been suspended many times. He's been fined many times. This has been going on for years. So to me, I don't think it's wrong that Reeves is suspended. I think it's wrong that Reeves is suspended, but Wilson was not. So Wilson does something similar, gets a $5,000 fine, no suspension. Reeves gets a 2-game suspension in the playoffs. And his rap sheet is not as long as Wilson's. So this is what's frustrating to me with a lot of sports leagues. They seem to be inconsistent on suspensions. The NFL, the NHL, the NBA too, in punishments. Not that I watch much NBA anymore. I was happy to see the Lakers got blown to hell yesterday by the Phoenix Suns, and I hope it happens again because I am so sick of LeBron James. I'm so sick of the Lakers. A friend of mine is actually a big Phoenix Suns fan and says this is the first time they've been to the playoffs in 10 years or something. So he's happy about what's going on there too. But we are not LeBron James fans or Los Angeles Lakers fans. I was happy that Colby Covington called him out again today. You can go look that up. I'm not gonna read that because I don't have it in front of me. But I think it was either today or yesterday. He called out LeBron James again for being an opportunist and a fraud and being silent on China, which he does. He will shut up and dribble for China all the time. We know this. So I think LeBron James has single-handedly ruined the NBA for a lot of fans. And I think that's why the ratings are so bad. And I think that's why last year's ratings, at least in part, why last year's ratings were all-time low for the finals. Worst they've ever had. They've been keeping NBA ratings since 1976. The lowest finals ever on record, 44 years, was last year. So that's what it is. I think a lot of people are turned off by the NBA now. I know I am, and it's disappointing because the NBA used to be one of my favorite things to do. I used to be really excited about watching NBA games, used to look forward to them. Some of the most athletic people anywhere on the planet. And I like to see their skill set, but it's just not enjoyable anymore. They've just become a bunch of crybabies. They whine all the time about the league, about the officials, about every single thing you can imagine. And it's off-putting. And the biggest name, the one who runs the league, it's not Adam Silver. It's not the owners like Mark Cuban and the others. No, the person who runs the league is LeBron. And his whining and his nonsense and his storming off the court like he did yesterday, like a little baby, is what's turning off a lot of fans. And his inconsistencies with his saying, "Oh, I'll always speak out on stuff that I think is wrong, whether it's in the United States or around the world," and then refusing to call out China, refusing to call out corporations who he works with, like Nike, who have exploited slave labor in other countries, and he makes a big profit. Why does he say nothing? Because he doesn't want to upset them. He wants to be able to sell his products in China. He wants to be able to do all that. He doesn't want to lose those opportunities, lose that money. And the league is clearly connected to China in a way that, I mean, I don't really understand all that, but the NBA apparently is pretty big in China, and I think they may be working for China to some extent. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I don't know if this is true; it's just an observation, but I, I think it's very possible that the Chinese government is using LeBron James to try and hurt America by saying all these things about the United States, but refusing to say anything about China. And actually, he actually defended China when Daryl Morley spoke out, said "Free Hong Kong," and LeBron James basically told him to shut up, even though he was offended when he was told to shut up. So that's LeBron James, and that's the NBA. That's why I no longer watch. All right, that tangent is over. I had some other stuff to talk about today. I think I don't know. I'm just kind of winging this. You probably know that. I appreciate everybody tuning in. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Let's say go Vegas Knights. I hope they win tonight and tie it up. Even if they lose this series, at least win a couple of games, make it interesting. So we'll hope for that. We'll hope for the Phoenix Suns to beat the Lakers tomorrow, or I think it's tomorrow, whenever the next game is. I'll hope for all of you guys to follow me on Twitter at BlackBeltZen. That's the easiest way to hit me up on social media. I don't like social media, so I don't use a lot of it. I am on Haps. I am on Instagram, but I don't really use those very much right now. We're gonna probably get into that more at some point, but not yet. So I'll keep you updated on all that. But until next time, I want to say thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to speaking to you guys live next week, as I do every Wednesday. I'm probably going to take a Wednesday off in June, but I'll let you know in advance about that. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. See you soon.